Good evening, everyone. Hi, Miss Bethany. I've never seen it from this angle, so I just looked up and there you are. So welcome to our second ADA Transition Public Outreach Meeting. I'm Tiffany McNair, the Executive Director of Community Development, and I'm joined by my side with Savannah's working on audio down here. But Savannah Brady is our ADA coordinator. And James Wick is with STV Company. It's our consultant to help us develop the plan. And they're going to go through a presentation and let you know what it is the city has done. How did we get to this point of developing this transition plan and what happens next? So your input is very important. And I do want to acknowledge our council member, Ms. Melissa Brown, who's in the audience with us, and also I did acknowledge Ms. Bethany, who's our Executive Director of Communications and Marketing, and also our Executive Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Antonio Murphy. So I'm going to hand this over to Savannah and James and enjoy and give us all the feedback that you have. We really, really, really want to hear from you. And we want to make sure that we get the information back to our council because they will be hearing from us about what these efforts produced, and they will be providing us feedback as well as hopefully adopting this plan. All right.
Good evening. Yeah, as Ms. McNair mentioned, my name is James Wick. I'm with STV. We are a consultant. I do accessibility consulting really all over the country. I'm a registered accessibility specialist here in Texas and a certified ADA coordinator, like Ms. Brady here as well. So our presentation this evening is going to kind of be a high-level kind of introduction and overview of the process thus far, and then kind of there will be some stuff that you may or may not understand, and that's fine. We'll kind of, if you got questions, ask us, and we'll kind of elaborate on some stuff, and then some stuff we'll kind of get into a little further. But this is kind of just an introduction of the process, what's happening, and then kind of letting everyone know that now is your time to provide feedback to the city and have time for you to comment, and because this is ultimately a plan for the residents and the people of Killeen, and so this is for you. And so with that, let's see, how do I click it? There we go. So a brief background. So back in June of 21, the city entered into a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice that required them to complete a self-assessment of the facilities, programs, activities, and the public rights of way, which is kind of your essentially your pedestrian infrastructure, sidewalks, curb ramps, all that kind of thing. And the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities and mandates equal access to public services, facilities, and public rights of way. So this plan is reflects Killeen's dedication to equity, safety, and inclusion for all residents and visitors as well. So this plan, what does this plan include? So the components of the plan include evaluating existing facilities and infrastructure and prioritizing improvements and scheduling remediation efforts to improve accessibility. And kind of recap of what's all evaluated is the city's policies and practices. So kind of essentially everything that's sort of in writing, I guess, dealing with events and how the city operates certain programs and everything that is involved with the public. They kind of have a outline of how it's done, and so we just they evaluate that for just making sure that it's accessible as possible, and then also accommodations can be made for people who need them. The city website, so their digital presence websites and documents that are online. Public buildings is one of the larger components of it. So all of the like this facility and the senior center and everything that the city operates, all of their facilities throughout the city. Their parks and amenities, and then kind of get into on the right side what we consider the public rights of way elements or the pedestrian elements, your pedestrian ramps, street ramp or curb ramps at corners, sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian signals, and other aspects of the public right of way. So the main purpose of the plan is to ensure safe and comfortable access to public buildings and public rights of way for all residents, workers, and visitors, and by enhancing mobility and safety. So improving pedestrian safety and mobility for all individuals through infrastructure, policy, and practice evaluations. And the ultimate goals are full compliance and integration to align with the federal ADA standards and the Texas accessibility standards, while integrating upgrades into the capital improvement plan. And community engagement, which is a key portion of this as well, to use public engagement to help inform decision-making and foster an inclusive culture in Killeen. You know, this is your community, and so your input is important, and it helps kind of shape how this plan ultimately takes shape. And if there's any questions throughout, y'all just please, wave at me or let us know. We can answer as we go as well. So here's kind of an overview too of so phase one was the facilities portion, but it also included the policy and practices and information as well. So in May of 2022, the city contracted with Meeting the Challenge, which was then operated as an independent company, part of STV, and then we've since become integrated, and we operate under STV now. So that's kind of why everything is just referred to as STV, but at the time it was Meeting the Challenge. But so we evaluated the city's services, their policies and practices, and went out and actually did physical surveys of their facilities for compliance with the ADA. So that was kind of phase one. And ultimately it was 56 facilities, 31 parks and trails. And we also looked at the website and all the subsequent pages that are involved with that and other communication elements that the city operates. And most of this is funded, or I guess really all of it, is funded by capital improvement projects. And as we'll talk about phase two in a minute, but phase one, as you see, kind of is the buildings and parks and those aspects. So that's funding, and then the funding for the public right-of-way stuff, which is phase two, is kind of two separate projects, if you will, kind of look at it that way. Their work is going to be going on at the same time, throughout in various areas, but they're kind of funded in different ways and taken care of by kind of different departments. There's a lot of players in all of this. All right. So initially, we've given some with major input from the city. We've given some priority to the facilities that you see on the list here, being City Hall and the City Hall Annex downtown, and then the Civic and Conference Center, as well as the airport, regional airport, the Lions Club Rec Center, and the Senior Center, which is they're next door to each other, and then the utilities. Collections and administrations, a lot of public spaces where we see a lot of public activity.
So I'll actually jump in a little bit here. He's taller than me, so can y'all hear me without turning his mic? Put it down. There we go. Okay. So one of the reasons why we chose some of these facilities, for example, City Hall, the Senior Center, and utilities collections, those are all our polling locations. And so as far as city-owned polling locations, we want to make sure that we are addressing those buildings from a parking and accessibility component to make sure that we are allowing people to be able to use their voice. Someone has a voice, they have a vote, but if they don't feel comfortable going to the location to be able to use it, they're not going to use it, they're going to stay at home. And so we want to make sure that we make those facilities as user-friendly as possible, as accessible and inclusive as possible, to make sure that we are giving all of our community members that voice. The same with the annex, that's our municipal courts. So we have quite a few people that visit those areas. We want to make sure that we are allowing them to do so easily and with confidence. The Civic Center, the Rec Center, and the airport, those are all high-use facilities. The caveat here is, as James mentioned, a lot of these have different funding inputs. So utility collections, for example, is a separate it's a separate fund from all of these facilities. The regional airport, they use separate funding. And so you'll see projects going on at other buildings that aren't necessarily in quote unquote order, but it's because they're using separate funding in order to be able to complete those projects. Parks is another really big one. They have outside funding sources that are not the same pot of money and the same capital improvement project fund that all of the other funds are coming from. And so while you will see that we have the facilities set into a priority order, you will see out in the community projects ongoing at all times at other facilities that may or may not address accessibility issues. So I'll go ahead and jump into phase 2 and phase 3. So our phase 2 facilities are our priority 1. They're the Arts and Activity Center downtown, the city parks and trails, and then our aquatic center, both libraries, Main and Copper Branch, and then Stone Tree Golf Course. So again, these facilities, while they are not the initial high priority facilities, work will be ongoing at those facilities at all time. And those are primarily recreation facilities, and they are primarily used by the public. Then we move into phase 3, which are our priority 2 and 3 facilities. And these are primarily used by city staff, whether it's operations or support. And they have very limited to no public access. And it's the city cemetery, fire stations, police headquarters, the recycle center. You're going to those in some capacity in a public aspect, and we will address those areas of those facilities first. And then the more or less behind the scenes employee only access areas as time moves on. You want to jump on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Sven. And here's kind of I guess I think this map was up earlier too, but I forgot to mention that there's a map there which I know is a little hard to read, but it just pinpoints as all the facilities that were surveyed as part of this. It kind of has a little different symbology for the various types of main facilities and then parks and trails. And then we have on the screen some pictures. You might recognize the upper left from right outside here, the parking. So parking is kind of a first priority generally area because generally when someone comes to a facility, they have to park first generally unless they're dropped off or something. And so parking is usually a higher priority because that's your first a site arrival point. If the parking is not accessible or the ramps are not proper and things like that, then you're likely to not be able to use the facility or maybe even get out of your vehicle. And then the upper right image is kind of an entrance. That is, again, after parking, then you get to the building entrance, of course. And so the entrance is kind of another priority area. Entrances and parking are your higher areas where a lot of the stuff starts. And then in the lower left, we have a restroom. A lot of things are happening in a lot of issues that we see in restrooms because pretty much every little element, the grab bars and sinks, everything in the restroom has certain criteria that has to be met. And so there's usually a lot of errors and things that we find in restrooms that need to be evaluated. So those are another area where priority is focused after the initials of site arrival and entry. And then there's a picture of some door hardware there on the lower right, which is kind of another big item that we see, a lot of improper door hardware, which is another barrier to access. And then we'll talk about phase 2 now. So kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, but phase 2 is the public rights of way, which is essentially your sidewalks and curb ramps. So everything within the right of way of the city streets includes street crossings and pedestrian signals and sometimes public. We have some on-street parking, a little bit of on-street parking in the city. So all that stuff's kind of covered here. So in February of 23 is when the city again contracted with us to help evaluate. So we came out in force and spent about a year down here just walking the city and assessing and documenting the sidewalks. And ultimately, the city was broken into 7 areas. And here's a map that kind of shows. And ultimately, this zoning was more for the work portion of it, so we could start in areas and focus and then move around. And they were roughly broken up into equal, according to amounts of sidewalk and curb ramps, is about the best as we could. But also like area 1. Work area 1 is kind of the central original or kind of downtown and older, kind of the older part of the town, older part of Killeen. So that was kind of meant to be the first area. It was kind of not necessarily the highest priority area, but it's definitely one of the areas that's going to be somewhat of a focus just because of the nature of what's within that area. And it kind of branches out from there. Ultimately, did about 46 square miles of area, and which included about 850 linear miles of sidewalk and around 8,100 curb ramps, and plus other things that I mentioned, like the crossings and this and that. So kind of what's contained. So the pedestrian infrastructure includes elements in the public right of way. So sidewalks, ramps, street crossings, all your pedestrian signals, the signal heads and the push buttons, and then, some on-street parking. And there's a few other minor elements with it as well. So kind of on the screen, the lower left image is a nice marked street crossing. And then the central left image is a curb ramp at one of the corners. And then we have some nice sidewalk pictures. And then on the right there, it's a little hard to see, but there's a pedestrian signal head on the pole there with the push buttons. So all those things are kind of components that are covered within, and they have a lot of criteria for each of them. So similar to the facilities portion, the pedestrian infrastructure, there's a lot of different funding sources available, and there's also opportunities for grants, state and federal, that the city, I know, will be evaluating and looking into as projects are progressing. And also one thing that comes into with this too is I say a lot, but some of the roads through town are TxDOT as well. And so when TxDOT comes through, that's their purview to make sure that upgrades, when they do them, are part of. But the city sometimes is involved with that as well. So we've seen that. I live up in the Waco area, and there's a lot of work happening up there with TxDOT too, and we've done some evaluating for them. So that's their responsibility. But the city is also responsible for the balance of it. And one thing to mention too is an ongoing timeline, because as you can imagine, with that scale of just volume of, I guess, sidewalk and improvements that are needed, this is a pretty massive undertaking. There's a long timeline for this. The city is they're still evaluating, kind of building a schedule, but we're working towards, and we know that it's going to be a while. But and of course, it depends a lot on funding and resources and availability. Yeah.
So to expand on what he's saying, there were 30,000 touch points on the GIS map when they came through. And so one of the things, Mr. Andrew Zagers, he's our city engineer, he presented at the city council meeting, not the special meeting, but the one before that roads have a required timeline. As a road goes down, it ages, and then they come in and they correct it. So this is another area that you will see ongoing work, that it might not be where you think it's supposed to be, but there are some things that will be happening based on the city's engineering replacement lines and their timelines that'll be concurrent with the ADA correction timelines. And so as James mentioned too, TxDOT is another one of those. So they've got their own timelines, and they'll be working on roads. And so one thing that Mr. Zagers did note is that as far as the public right-of-way is concerned, areas with school will take priority. So we want to make those walkable areas where we do have high foot traffic, and make sure that we're not having people having to walk in the road or potentially get injured for some reason because they fell or they tripped or the sidewalk wasn't adequate. And so the engineering office is working to develop a ranking system, as it says, about to remediate based on priority, funding, and then planned upgrades. And all of those three timelines with TxDOT, the regularly scheduled upgrades, and then as well as ADA remediation, will all kind of run concurrently. And the secondary portion of that is Colleen Connect. So the city uses a software called SeeClick Fix, and it is available on our website. So if you go to our website, up at the top, across the top, it says online. Oh, there goes my brain. Yes, online services. Thank you. Online services. And if you hover over that, it will drop down and it says report a concern. And that will take you to the SeeClick Fix Colleen Connect page. And that allows you to report concerns at the parks. It allows you to report concerns of the right-of-way. There's a variety of drop-down menus in there that you can choose from, that if you are having an issue with an accessibility or being able to access something, ADA will soon be a portion of that. And so you can report specifically an ADA concern, and we're in the process of working that. But also, if there is a road that you like to take, but the curb is messed up or the curb ramp is broken and the sidewalk's not wide enough, you can report those areas and we will do what we can to get to them as soon as possible. So that is a secondary option that you do have available at your fingertips at all time to be able to report accessibility issues.
Yeah, that's a great feature too, because, the city is going to have their plan in place for, taking care of a lot of these issues, but also that input is important too, because then it brings up areas that they need to, that they can focus on as well. So it helps them plan ahead. And I forgot to mention this on the phase 1 slide too, but at the bottom, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is the transition plan has been published, and there's some appendix that go with it that detail all of this a lot further. We could be here for hours tonight talking about all of it, but ultimately, this is kind of an introduction, and then we'll have those sources available to view, and then the city's plan will be available to review and to comment on as well. Kind of to summarize, this is a comprehensive infrastructure assessment. So Colleen and STV evaluated as I mentioned, their policies and practices at a public infrastructure, which included the buildings, parks, ramps, sidewalks, accessible pedestrian signals, and all of that was done, checked for ADA compliance. And this is a foundation for future improvements. So the evaluation results have and will continue to inform the ADA transition plan and prioritizing improvements in accessibility across city buildings and the public rights of way. And then, so how to stay involved. So community input is very important. There's an opportunity to share your thoughts, concerns, and suggestions on improvements and to help shape the plan. There is a QR code on the screen, but it's also, I know, available in other places, but this particular one will take you to the online survey. There's kind of a survey that kind of outlines, has some questions and talks about what facilities you use, and if you know of any issues that you can kind of highlight. It's another way to provide some input. And then there are drafts available of the transition plan, I think at City Hall and Senior Center, and both libraries and the community development, and as well as online. So there'll be sources that you can get access to those documents and kind of read through them and provide input and comments if you'd like. And then, thanks first of all for being involved. And then another ways to do that, or additional ways to do that, you can also reach out to your ADA coordinator. And that information is here, as well as online on the city's ADA website. And then this is a living document. The transition plan is very much a living document. And what we put out now is not the final version. It's going to be amended and adjusted as the city works through this and makes improvements. So keep in touch, keep track. You can, gosh, my brain is not working anymore either. You can keep track online and kind of follow updates, and because the city will be updating it. And then this QR code also that's up now also takes you to I guess it's the ADA accessibility, y'all's website that features this where the plan is, and also that survey that was mentioned. Yeah, I think that's.
So I'm going to open it to questions in just a minute. Hold on, Miss Carla. But I wanted to let you know, so in addition to the survey, we're doing a public comment period. So yes, I want you to complete the survey. That's very important. Please share it with your friends, share it with any stakeholders, share it with anybody that you know that you think would be interested. Currently, we have 57 as of 4 o'clock. We have 160,000 people in Killeen, so I would really hope that we could get much more than 57 surveys completed. It does not matter if somebody can't take it themselves, help them out, answer it for them. Just please help spread the word. And so our public comment period actually opens on Monday. and it will end June 17th. So please read the transition plan, go through it. Those appendices that he mentioned, each piece, that actually breaks down a little further what the order of the facilities are, what the order of the public right-of-way plan is. It's extensive, but it's worth your time if you have a vested interest in the outcome. Please, by all means, read it. Let me know your thoughts. You can email me, visit me at my office. I'll come visit you. I love coffee. We can sit at a coffee shop and talk about it. And so I would love to hear your thoughts. The other thing is we are putting together a focus group. The intention is for that group to meet at the end of June. So if you are interested in being a part of the focus group, please let me know. And I can add you to my contact list for that. So we have, as Ms. McNair mentioned in the beginning, we're coming back to council in July with the final draft of the final version, rather, of the transition plan. So we'll be at council on July 7th for the discussion, and then July 21st, hopefully for adoption. So this plan is, I'm very vested in the outcome. I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to help things. And everybody in the city, and as far as management goes, Ms. McNair all the way up, everybody cares. And we have the ability to do it, and it just needs legs. But in order for it to have legs and in order for it to go places, we need the community to step up and have a voice. So again, please share the survey. Please read the transition plan. Visit our website. We have two current websites our comms team has developed for us, and they're amazing. One is specific to accessibility in the city, and the other is specific to the transition plan. So on that transition plan page, it will track what buildings we're working on, what the expected budget is, what the expected timeline of the projects is, and what we're actually doing, an overview of what we're doing at those facilities. So if at any point in time you have questions, reach out to me. I can tell you exactly what we're doing and when we're planning on it. And I love coffee. I would love to talk to you about it. So with that, does anybody have any questions? They can't on Zoom. Please state your name and your question.
Okay, so my name is Carla, and the question that I have is this. This survey was done 2 years ago, correct? The initial survey was done 2 years ago, 4 years ago. Okay, so how often does the ADA change, improve, implement, alter? I mean, are we going to start doing all of this and then in 6 months they're going to have new standards, they're going to have new requirements that we need to accommodate, or how does that kind of thing work?
Good question. So it does change, but it changes slowly. I know the ADA, which is the federal guidelines. I'm particularly talking about just kind of facility physical objects right now. There's not a current plan in place for updates to that one. I do know that the Texas accessibility standards, which are based off the federal guidelines, but
Right.
they go into a little more detail. They're basically more strict, if you will. They are currently being updated.
Okay.
So that's one thing that they'll have to take it, but there's not going to be drastic changes that are just going to completely, negate the work that's been
Well,
done.
That leads to my next question is who takes precedent? So if it is our city wants A, B, and C, and the federal government says A, B, and C, and then Texas says, no, you have to include, LMNOP. So do we include that? Do we stay with the federal guidelines? Do we stay with the states, the cities, the counties? How does that kind of thing, how does that work?
So usually you have to look to the federal guidelines are always your baseline, but the state typically the states, and again I'm primarily just for this, I'm primarily kind of referring to the facilities because there's other components to it as well, but their guidelines are usually you want to adhere to the more strict of them, and so they'll kind of have to evaluate that and see if the Texas ones are more stringent or more strict or more or I guess or have better improve the accessibility more so than the federal, because the federal they're kind of looked at as, here's your baseline. If you comply with the ADA guidelines, you pass with a D. We'd like to see you pass with a B, so take it or more, but an A. So do better, but at least you have to at least comply to these minimum guidelines. And the state ones are typically a little higher level.
So
Hopefully I answered your question.
to
Okay.
expand on that, the last ADA standards that were released federally were released in 2010. And we're still working under the 2010 guidelines. Prior to that, it was back in the early 90s. So it's not something, when he says that it's slow moving, it is really not something that happens often. And ultimately, even from the 90s to 2010, there were very minor changes. And all they did was add, and they added mini golf and some other amusement type facilities, shooting ranges, things that weren't initially really a popular pastime in the early 90s. And so more to his point, I know that the ultimate goal is accessibility. And so I can do something at the end of the day that makes it accessible, but we want to make it accessible and inclusive and friendly and encouraging. And you want people to be out in the community. And so, yes, we can meet the minimum. And if the as he said, if the ADA standards are a minimum, but then the state comes back and says, well, we think it should be this, and it increases accessibility, that's awesome. We want to do that, and we want to make it welcoming for everybody, and we want a community that's welcoming for everybody. And so ultimately, yes, we are following federal guidelines first, state guidelines second, but we are doing everything that we can to make it as welcome and inclusive and as accessible as possible.
And also when we're doing the evaluations on site, we used the proposed right-of-way guidelines, which are still not officially, they're kind of officially adopted by some departments, but not others. And so we use those. We also use the outdoor developed area guidelines, which are going to be coming into the Texas accessibility standards as part of their. So the city should be in pretty good shape with the stuff that we've given them. Yeah.
I know the remediation plan, this plan is to bring things up to standard codes as they stand now. It's an ongoing plan, but can you touch on how the ADA compliance policy does with the growth of the city since it's growing as much with new development?
So one of the requirements of transition plans and self-evaluation plans in general. So Ms. Carla mentioned that our self-evaluation plan was originally done 4 years ago. So you can look at things and say, well, a lot's changed in 4 years. Ultimately, what we thought the community wanted 4 years ago, I'm seeing now in the survey, is not mirrored in the current survey. And so ultimately, facilities change. They're built, they're expanded, they're in Colleen's case, they're torn down. We had a senior center in 22 that we don't have now. And so, things change, lives change, the community changes. To Mr. Murphy's point, we're expanding greatly. And so one of the things that is required of the self-evaluation and transition plan is ongoing inspection. And so one of those things is, as we are continuing to build new facilities, those are now being inspected. I'm working very closely with Mr. Murphy's department to check for ADA, because in that case, with construction in the state, you're required to meet TOS. TOS checks parking to the bathroom to the water fountain. ADA checks way beyond that. And so what we're starting to do now in those city facilities is to go in on a regular basis and to make sure that what James's team found back in 2022 is still a viable problem. Is it a viable issue? Have we expanded the issue? Have we corrected the issue? There are a lot of places where we have corrected the issues, but there are more places where we have new ones since 2022. That's part of change. And so we have part of our policies that we're developing is to establish an ongoing timeline of how those facilities will be inspected and how often those will be inspected, and to make sure that we're posting that to the public and at all times, and that they are aware of those inspections. Does that answer your question? Okay, Misty.
So I'm Melissa Brown. I just want to add from the city council perspective a few of the things that have happened. So we are responsible for setting building standards and construction standards. We added a part of the ordinance that says if you're building a new subdevelopment, those curb cuts have to be there. They have to meet ADA standards now. The width of your sidewalk has to meet the ADA standard. They have to meet the slope standards. So even those plats that are put in by developers are now being evaluated for ADA. One of the things, last time I was on the council, I was on a knee scooter for about a year. And I noticed that just going to check my mail was nearly impossible without almost getting hit by a car. There was no way to get to my mailbox, which is a hub, without going into the road or trying to come down off of a curb. So in our new subdevelopment standards, one of the things that we said, you have to have a cutout from the curb. So it sets back off of the road. And then there's a ramp to be able to get down to your mailbox. You don't have to go all the way down to the corner anymore, risk getting hit by a car if you're in a wheelchair, you're on a scooter, you're on crutches, whatever. But you also don't have to worry about trying to come down off of a steep curb and hit that hard angle on it. So the council is constantly taking the advice of our planning and development, our ADA office. And as we see things that can change in public infrastructure as stuff is being built, we're going to do that before we have to go back as a city and repair it again. And that way, when we're accepting the dedication of all of this right of way and all the roads and everything, we know it's already meeting those standards. And they've been really good about advising us. My own one little personal ad is that in looking through, it mentions that at the parks, the picnic tables don't necessarily have accessibility access up to them. What I don't see is that the picnic tables themselves are not necessarily wheelchair accessible, where they have the extension for a wheelchair to be able to fit up to it. And so that would be my one request, is that we remember those. Thank you.
So to address that, and there's a couple points there that as I mentioned, I'm working really closely with Mr. Murphy's department, and not just for future parks planning, but also current parks. And that is one of the things, is making sure that we are going back and looking at those tables, looking at the furniture that's provided, including our benches, and providing wheelchair access to those. And so I will say, across the board, I started with the city in October. And one thing that I've noticed is a wonderful, there's a saying in coaching, and it's a good defense is a good offense. And what I've noticed is everybody is extremely proactive. And when I mention what we're doing or what I'm here for, and I say, hi, I'm the ADA coordinator, they say, oh, great, I have all these ideas and I have all these plans and I need to talk to you about them, and I need to make sure that they're ready to go. And so I will say that for the city across the board has been, in all the departments, has been absolutely phenomenal, and they're excited to make these changes and they're excited to correct these things. Furthermore, for the city also adopted the PROAG standards, so the public right-of-way guidelines, into our code of ordinances back in 2024. So while we are actually working ahead of the Department of Justice at this point in time, because they have not formally adopted those standards, but we have. And so pat on the back to the city of Killeen from back then, that, we are being proactive in as many areas as we can to avoid, to Ms. Carla's point and Councilwoman Brown's point, to not have to redo. We want to work ahead and make sure that we're not redoing work. And especially one thing that we've done as well is to evaluate the life of things. So if we're looking at remediating a problem, are we going to fix something that in 2 or 3 years is not viable? And the answer has been a resounding no. We're not going to waste the funds that we have available on things that will be torn down or taken out of commission. So that is a really big thing that has been wonderful. Do we have any more questions?
It has to do with the people that are joining us online. Are they able to unmute if they want to speak, or are they only adding to the chat? Adding to the chat. Thank you. I heard you. So those of you who are online, if you have anything that you want us to discuss here in real time, we will read your question or your comment and provide a response. If you're not comfortable, or this is just not a suitable platform for you for communication, we do have our email address and phone number in the chat, and you can send that to us, and we'll include that in our public comments for this draft transition plan.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and set everybody free. Thank you so much again tonight for joining us tonight. I know that you all have very busy lives, and I sincerely appreciate your time. I appreciate your input. Again, please share the survey, reach out, read the transition plan. You don't have to read the whole thing. Pick a spot, start reading, and then let me know what you think. And please, again, visit in person, email us adahelp@kaleentexas.gov, or give me a call on the phone. I don't talk on the phone as long. Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So our survey is open as well as our public comment period until June the 17th. All right. So thank y'all. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes. Oh, we got another one. Okay, so it says, my question would be for plans for parking. A lot of van spaces are always taken by cars and we don't have a spot. So we are doing the best we can to correct what is currently there. There's a minimum standard required as to how many van spaces are allowed and how many car spaces are allowed. One thing that we found at city facilities is actually that the existing access aisles are not wide enough. And so trying to correct what's actually there. In some cases, we're adding. I know at the Heritage Trailhead, we are adding additional spaces. And so there are some situations where we have the space to be able to add extra van spaces where we can. Right now, please, they can hear you. I'm sorry, I know you're loud.
Hi, just a quick question. So right now, the way this is just right now situation. It is. What in the world? Okay, the speaker's weird. Okay, so, but we're able to still change it, update it. It's a work in progress. So the focus group that you're talking about are they, the people who are on the focus group, able to help make these changes?
Yes, and that is one of the things that one of the reasons why we wanted to do the focus group was because it's one thing to get an email, but to sit and actually talk to somebody who has a vested interest in something and hear the reasoning behind what they're doing is value. It's extremely valuable. And your heart comes through in a different way when I can sit and have a conversation and talk to you about why you have an issue with something or why you would like something or why this would work better for a certain populace of a certain type of disability. In a lot of ways, people know what they know and you don't know what you don't know. And so I may not know that someone who identifies as having a certain disability, I see it, would really benefit from a certain accommodation. And it's something that's within my reason and my ability to provide. But if I don't know that it's a need, I don't know that I can provide it. And I'm a researcher by nature. I'm going to find out how I can help and how we can spread the word. And then our parks department they're hit the ground running and they have inclusive swimming coming up this summer. So even as far as that, like that's an amazing program. But we don't know that there's a need until people express a need and a want. And I can't speak to what was done in the past, but I can speak to what's being done in the future and the right now. And our team right now is phenomenal. So if there's something that you can think of that you want or a program that you would love to see, we may not be able to deliver it immediately, but we will do our best. And I have a board in my office that's got tons of ideas on it, and we're gonna do them if I have any say in it. And I have a wonderful, again, everybody from the ground up is just so involved and they want to make it happen. And so it will happen. We have another question, and that is in the aquatic center, the lift is always broken. So
For the start of this season, new lifts were purchased. They will be functional in operation not only at the aquatic center, but at Long Branch Pool as well. So.
And that's straight from the professional. So, yes, sir.
You both mentioned that the transition plan is a living document, right? Did I understand that correctly? How often is it like reviewed and revised? And does that keep getting revised as you make improvements to things? Like I might have missed that in the briefing. I just wanted to know.
Yes, I'll speak and then you please add. But yeah, there's really not a prescribed update period, like timeline or period. It's recommended to be done as frequently as reasonably possible, just to kind of keep But I know in talking with Savannah, I know I'm encouraged to hear her talk about it because she's on top of it, I think, and I know that they're planning to update pretty frequently. And as things are happening and the facilities are being updated, those appendix and the document stuff will be updated and kind of revised, and because it's things change, needs change, a facility may no longer be needed, or they may decide to build a new facility, and so it's constantly going to be changing, and the city will have to evolve as best they can, and they'll keep it updated as frequently as they can, I know.
So to further expand on that, we built the website, the transition page for the city website, so that it is constantly living, and that will be updated on a regular basis. If we are finished with an area, for example, we just paved the rodeo. If you haven't seen it, go out there and see it. It's awesome. You want to talk about stability? By the way, shameless plug, the rodeo is going on tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday, so please go. But aside from that, it's amazing. And so that item will have a date as completed. We provided parking at the rodeo. That item will now have a date as completed. And so those are the types of things that will be updated in the transition plan. Ultimately, the core of the plan will never change. What will change is the appendices, and they will be updated with dates as to when they were last updated. Currently in the policies and procedures, I can't help it. I can't produce things that are behind. So I have it set into the policies and procedures right now to update on an annual basis. And so not only will we will have a set time period for the self-evaluations that are conducted on our facilities, but the transition plan will also have an anticipated date of update as well. And that will also be public. So we're trying to keep this as transparent as possible in as many ways as possible, so that if anybody... Oh, okay. Sorry, I just saw the screen. So that if anybody has a certain vested interest in a facility, that you can go to that transition plan at any point in time and see what's going on and when that's anticipated and the anticipated cost. So a final note is an idea. It says from our online crew, thank you so much, Ms. Dominguez, but full-size adult changing tables in city facilities would be nice. Our adults and children deserve dignity. I've had my first experience with using a changing table with my nephew this past weekend, and that's difficult. So yes, I know that from a federal level as well as a state level, they are currently looking at full-size changing tables and producing standards in relation to that. I know that is one of the areas that the state is going to be releasing in the next iteration.
Yes, there are currently some proposed guidelines for changing tables. They're kind of used as the recommended guidance, because we are seeing them a lot, like especially in airports and where there's a lot of just a lot of people, larger facilities. But that's one thing that's kind of encouraged to be looked at, certainly for facilities as they're coming online, because they're not part of the standards yet, but they will be soon.
What type of relationship have you guys developed with like the local disability authority here, Central Counties of Texas? I mean, they serve thousands of disabled citizens, so those citizens may not be able to verbalize their issues or identify their issues, but the staff that serve them should certainly be like recruited to provide outreach or information on the survey.
So do you want to?
There's a lot of nonprofits in the area that work with, so there's a lot of nonprofits in the area that work with and are for our special needs community. And we don't even know about this Click It. All right. So how much notice is being put out, or publications, and letting the public know, especially about this? I mean, how come it wasn't sent to like the school districts? I mean, one thing, how many families, like what, 40,000 families are special education enrolled? This should have gone to it for our families to come, and because a lot of families have a voice.
So 33,000 flyers, and it went to over, I want to say 47 schools. I will go back.
I can tell you for a fact, it did not go to Roy J. Smith Middle School, because those are the schools that my children go to. And it was not in the backpacks, and it was not emailed. But how is that coming to the parents? Okay, again, it was not coming to the parents. So again, if you want the families to come out, then you have to let us know what's happening. No. So that is one of the main things.
And I do appreciate your passion. And to the extent that we can, Miss Bethany and her staff do not actually engage with the students themselves, and they do not disperse. So, yeah, it's our executive director of communications and marketing. So when she and her team do those tens of thousands of disbursements to the schools, that's it. So I think that what I'm hearing is maybe a conversation to happen with the school, that when the city does drop off those flyers, that they make sure that they are giving them out, because we only can go so far within the facility. And there's only so much that we can do once we get the information out, because I have to tell you, in the time that I've been here is just under 3 years, the improvement in outreach efforts from the communication department has been astounding. It's been a complete 180, and I really can do nothing but commend Miss Bethany and her team. There's so much that wasn't taking place prior to her arrival, and they're putting these things together like this. So is there anything you want to add to that? Because there's, like I said, you drop them off at the school. You cannot force, and you cannot interact with the children to say, hey, put this in your backpack. But I do think it's important to make sure she does flyers for school disbursements and distribution, what, multiple times a week, a month? Yeah. Yeah, that is the collaboration, the fact that she does have the connection with KISD and they are receiving those. But I'll let you speak for your own.
That's mostly it. I mean, 33,000 flyers. It takes us about a good 2.5 days to distribute that across the city. I forget the number of miles. It's a lot of hours. And I don't know off the top of my head the number for that particular school, but I know that they were one that did receive the flyers. The other things that you can possibly sign up for, we have alerts that you can always sign up for. If you want, after this, you can share with me your email address. I typically send. Okay. Okay. I understand. I understand. Community outreach is something that we are definitely working on. And the first step is definitely through the KISD distribution. But as Tiffany mentioned, we don't interact with the students, it's just the staff. Yeah.
And the C-Click Fix feature, Savannah just worked with our IT department and communications department to make that available within the past week. So that's why you're just hearing it, and that's why she actually timed it to be able to make the announcement that we have this additional ability to hear from you at Tuesday's meeting and this meeting this evening. But they work together cross-departmentally. It's happening. Mr. Murphy is here. There's a lot happening. And like I started with, I really do appreciate your passion and that you're here, because we count on citizens to be engaged and to be active and to also almost act as a surrogate for us when you know things and you know what families that have a voice and have an interest and they can absolutely help us make it better. We would love for you to share that information when you're made aware and invite these people to come. And the same with yours as far as the information on some of these nonprofit groups. We want this. So it's not a disruption, or it's not anything that we are not receiving. We are arms wide open. Tell us, how do we get more engagement? We want this to happen because I want these families to flood our city council members and also our city council meeting on July 7th and 21st, and tell them how important this is to you. And when you tell them that it's important, because we're in our budget cycle, tell them that you want them to ensure that there's funding there each year so we can make these improvements happen. We don't want to have a plan that we present, that the community is enthusiastic about, and we have the city council ultimately adopt it, and there's no funding, so it sits there, it collects dust, and the edges of the pages start to curl. So come in, let us know. I appreciate this type of feedback because it makes me work harder, and I'm more aware of what the community needs are. I'm not a native of Killeen, so I've been learning a lot, and I really do appreciate all the feedback. It helps us to improve on what we provide. So again, thank you for your passion, and I'm glad that you're here. And I love your Rainbow Bright bag. So, yeah.
So I'm also going to, I'm going to expand on this. So earlier when I said I like to drink coffee, Miss Lammers laughed because she has a sip and chat. So she's one of our local organizations that is actually branching out, and she's working really hard to connect other organizations to each other so that Bell County has a voice. So it's not just Temple, but I mean, excuse me, not just Killeen, but we're spreading into Temple, and we're linking arms as organizations that can all help each other. And she has connections that I don't have. I've got connections that she doesn't know. Miss Dominguez is on as well. She's with the Partners Resource Network, and she is another one that they're phenomenal resources. And so I sit with them at the sip and chats, and I try to meet as many of them as I can. And then I also, as far as you ask who I sent it to and how to get it out, I sent it to every audiologist, every doctor that deals with a prosthetic, every autistic specific medical office, whether it's a therapy or whether it's a prescriber. I've sent it to everybody that I possibly can. And then my intention, of course, is I beat feet. So I'm going to get out there and meet as many people as I can as well. So the best that I can do is put my name out there, shake their hand, say hello, this is what we're working on. And I try really hard to do that. I'm one person. Ultimately, I have amazing support. Obviously, Miss Tiffany has a heart for it. And so we're doing everything that we can really to get out into the community and to reach those people. And then we are supported by people like Mr. Murphy's Parks and Recs department, that they're doing their own programming and they're taking off on their own routes and doing things on their own. So we currently have 18 department accessibility contacts across the city. So there is a DAC, is what I call them. There is a DAC in every single department in the city. And that person is responsible for being the subject matter expert for their department and their division. And then if they need help, they need resources, then they come to me and we move it up the chain. And so, the city is really taking root in a lot of ways, if I want to put it that way. We're growing branches and we're growing leaves and we're growing flowers, but we're also taking root and we're digging down deep into our departments to do training and to further our own understanding of customer service and how we interact with people on a regular basis. The reality is a lot of our employees are identify as being disabled. And so you don't know that because the majority of disabilities are invisible. And so it's important to us that we not only recognize our citizens and our community members, but also our employees who are also community members. And those that aren't community members, we still want to take care of them when they come into our community. So all in all, does anybody else have any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
I think there's
Yes. So July 7th is when we'll bring it to council as a discussion item. And then July 21st is when council will vote to solidify the transition plan and adopt it formally for the city. Hopefully, well, yeah, I've positive thoughts only. Hopefully they will vote in our favor and they will adopt it formally because we have drafted. Poor James, I was a middle school teacher and I taught writing. Poor James has made several iterations of this draft. So that is why I ask you to read it as well. I know Miss Carla has a printed draft and she's full of sticky notes. So please, she held up her binder with her sticky notes. So please read the document. If you're interested in the focus group, reach out to me again via email, our website, phone, however you need to get a hold of me. I would love to have you as part of that group to dig down deep into it and really know whether this works for our community and whether it works for your family and your friends who it may impact. So thank you again for coming tonight. I really appreciate y'all. Mr. James, thank you for coming. Oh, I got one more. Are KISD facilities involved in this, or does only apply to the public. So this only applies to the city of Killeen. KISD has their own initiatives and they would have their own plan in place. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for everybody online. Thank y'all so much for attending. I appreciate your time in person. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.